Okay, so welcome back to our Unit 5 lecture on revolutions. This is topic 5.3, Industrial Revolution Begins. So the thematic learning focus for this lecture is going to be interactions with the environment. By the end of this lecture, I want you to be able to explain how environmental factors contributed to industrialization from 1750 to 1900. Historically, a variety of factors contributed to the growth of industrial production and eventually resulted in the Industrial Revolution, including proximity to waterways, like access to rivers and canals, geographical distribution of coal, iron, and timber, urbanization, improved agricultural productivity, legal protection of private property, access to foreign resources, and accumulation of capital. The development of the factory system concentrated production in a single location and led to an increasing degree of specialization in labor. So let's start with what is industrialization. Unit 5 is largely centered around industrialization, which is the process by which a region transforms from an economy focused on agriculture and making goods by hand to one that manufactures goods on a larger scale using machinery. Now, prior to the Industrial Revolution, Britain largely operated on the cottage industry model, where production was manual, decentralized, and based in homes or small workshops. The advent of new machinery such as the spinning jenny and the power loom made mass production possible, necessitating larger facilities like factories. These technological innovations, coupled with the availability of raw materials and an expanding transportation network like canals and railways, propelled Britain into an era of industrialization. As factories proliferated, production shifted from individual homes to centralized locations, marking the transition from the cottage industry to the Industrial Revolution. So, this list sets the stage for all Unit 5 from this topic. This lesson will focus on the environmental factors that allowed the Industrial Revolution to develop. So, here we have, it began in Britain in the late 18th century. We see a transition from handmade goods to machine-produced items. Textiles, iron, and coal mining were among the first to see significant changes. We see the introduction of the steam engine, the spinning jenny, and the power loom, the development of railways and canals that improved transportation of goods, the rapid growth of cities, which we know is called urbanization, as people moved from rural, like farming areas, seeking factory jobs in bigger cities. We see the rise of capitalism and new financial institutions, which sets the stage for global industrialization, trade, and imperialism. The emergence of distinct working, middle, and upper classes, and the increased use of coal, which led to pollution and deforestation. So let's examine the proximity to waterways. During the early stages of industrialization, Britain's network of rivers and canals bolstered its industrial growth. These waterways facilitated efficient transportation of raw materials such as coal and iron directly to factories and subsequently allowed finished products to be transported to ports and cities with ease. Canals, purposefully constructed to link previously unconnected regions, bridged gaps in the natural river network, ensuring that even inland regions had access to trade routes. This extensive and cost-effective transportation system not only reduced the cost of goods, but also fostered interconnected markets, which encouraged specialization and large-scale production. As a result, Britain's waterways became the arteries of the Industrial Revolution, promoting both domestic trade and international commerce. Britain's geographical makeup provided abundant access to essential raw materials, driving its position as the epicenter of the Industrial Revolution. Coal, found in vast quantities across the region like South Wales, Northumberland, and the Midlands, powered steam engines and heated furnaces, becoming the primary energy source for burgeoning industries. Iron ore, plentiful in areas such as the Forest of Dean and the Weald, was crucial for constructing machinery, tools, railways, and buildings, underpinning the infrastructure expansion of the era. Timber, harvested from both domestic woods and imported due to Britain's vast maritime reach, I want you to think back to Unit 4, was indispensable for shipbuilding, a driving force behind the nation's dominant naval and trade prowess, and as an initial fuel source before the widespread adoption of coal. So let's examine urbanization. The promise of employment opportunities in new growing industries drew vast numbers of people to towns and cities. These new urban centers, burgeoning around factories and mills, rapidly expanded to accommodate the influx of workers. This urbanization created a readily available workforce concentrated in close proximity to the industrial hubs, making it easier for industries to source labor efficiently. These dense urban environments fostered innovation as ideas and knowledge circulated more rapidly. The very act of urbanization, bringing together labor, capital, and entrepreneurial spirit within confined areas, accelerated the pace of industrial growth, creating a symbiotic relationship where industrialization spurred urbanization, and urban growth, in turn, fueled further industrial advancement. We also see improved agricultural productivity. Crop rotation and the seed drill were instrumental innovations that significantly enhanced agricultural productivity during the early stages of the Industrial Revolution in Britain. By alternating different crops in succession on the same plot of land, farmers could both enrich the soil and break cycles of pests and diseases that were specific to certain crops. This practice ensured the soil retained its nutrients, preventing it from being exhausted from continuous planting of the same crop. As a result, yields increased and more land became viable for farming. Before the advent of the seed drill, seeds were often scattered by hand, leading to irregular spacing, inconsistent depth, and inefficient use of seeds. The seed drill ensured that seeds were planted at a consistent depth and spacing, resulting in better germination rates and maximized use of land. So what exactly were the results of improved agricultural productivity? Innovations in farm techniques and equipment led to higher agricultural yields, ensuring more consistent and larger food supplies. With more food available, the population could grow as fewer people faced food scarcity and mortality rates due to famine declined. A growing population combined with agricultural efficiencies meant fewer hands were needed on farms. This excess labor force began to migrate to urban centers in search of work in newly emerging industries, thus fueling urbanization. The increased agricultural output supported the burgeoning urban populations and allowed Britain to sustain the workforce needed for its growing industrial sector at the onset of the Industrial Revolution. So this takes us to new legal protections. In the lead-up to the Industrial Revolution, Britain underwent significant legal and cultural shifts that increasingly recognized and protected private property rights. The enclosure movement of the 18th century, for instance, involved the consolidation of small landholdings into larger farms owned by individual landowners, thereby creating a framework where land became a defined private property, often protected by legal statutes. These legal safeguards ensured that inventors and entrepreneurs could retain the benefits from their innovations and investments without fear of expropriation. This certainty and protection of assets encouraged more individuals to invest in new technologies, business ventures, and manufacturing processes, knowing that their potential profits and intellectual property would be legally protected. In essence, the strengthened protection of private property acted as a catalyst for the Industrial Revolution, fostering an environment of innovation, risk-taking, and capital accumulation pivotal for industrial growth. So what about foreign resources? Britain's vast colonial empire provided it with a unique advantage during the early stages of the Industrial Revolution. Stretching across continents, this empire ensured an unparalleled access to a wealth of foreign resources. Raw materials such as cotton from India, rubber from Malaysia, and various minerals and precious metals from Africa flowed into Britain, supplying its factories with the materials necessary for production. Moreover, these colonies also served as captive markets for British manufactured goods, thereby ensuring both a consistent supply of raw materials and a ready market for finished products. This relationship between Britain and its colonies not only underpinned the economic growth in Britain, but also played a fundamental role in financing and fueling the Industrial Revolution. The continuous cycle of resource extraction and goods export formed an economic engine that positioned Britain at the forefront of global industrialization. Essentially, Britain could get whatever materials it needed from almost anywhere on the globe. And this leads to the accumulation of capital. Prior to and during the Industrial Revolution, Britain's accumulation was facilitated through various channels, reflecting the nation's increasing financial sophistication and global economic dominance. Britain's colonies and established maritime empire allowed it to accumulate vast amounts of wealth before the Industrial Revolution. Now, I want you to think back to mercantilism and the favorable balance of trade from Unit 4. Additionally, the establishment of various financial institutions provided safe avenues for businesses to grow. Modern banks allowed businesses to save and move money. Stock exchanges provided a way for companies to raise money for further investment in infrastructure or business expansion. And new insurance companies facilitated trade and investment by mitigating risks associated with long-term industrial projects and international trade. Pictured here on the slide is the Royal Exchange in London in the late 1700s. It was the country's first specialized commercial building, which was designated to be the center of commerce for the City of London. Okay, and so that takes us to the Industrial Revolution key ideas. Before I go over the key ideas, just a reminder, so in your packet there is an SAQ practice. I'd like you to complete that as well. That is part of this part of your reading guide. So the first question, I want you to explain one way in which Britain's natural geography facilitated the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Then I want you to describe one effect of increased agricultural output in Britain in the period of 1750 and 1900. And lastly, identify one economic development in Britain that aided industrialization in the period of 1750 to 1900. Make sure to complete that in your guided reading packet. And there is also a graphic organizer. The Industrial Revolution begins 5.3. So you see the little boxes there. What are 6 things that contributed to industrialization from 1750 to 1900? And all that leads to that industrialization. And then at the bottom, I want you to consider the thematic focus of humans and the environment. The environment shapes human societies, and as populations grow and change, These populations in turn shape their environments. So in the box at the bottom on the graphic organizer, I want you to answer this question. How did environmental factors shape industrialization in this period? How did industrialization in turn shape the environment? The last thing you need to do for this topic is the spice tea, which this time your topic is, of course, the Industrial Revolution. So as you are completing this, I want you to think about the social, the political, the interactions with the environment, culture, economics, and technology. So the key ideas for this topic, 5.3, is these factors all contributed to the onset of industrial revolution in Britain in the late 18th century. Proximity to waterways, such as the access to rivers and canals, geographical distribution of coal, iron, and timber, urbanization, improved agricultural productivity, legal protection of private property, access to foreign resources through the colonies, and the accumulation of capital. All right, make sure you take a look at Heimler's Topic 5.3 review video. As always, I put the link to that in the description. Make sure to complete not just the guided notes, but your SAQ practice, your graphic organizer, and your spice tea. I'll see you in class. Have a great night.